Things with air flowing around them tend to move towards the side where the air is flowing fastest. Aeroplane wings are shaped so that air flows faster over the top. The faster the plane moves compared to the air, the greater the lift force. Like an aeroplane wing, a golf ball is designed for flight. As we saw in the contact section, all good golf shots have lots of backspin. The dimples on the ball help air to flow faster over the top of the ball and slow it down underneath. A golf shot's curious trajectory is shaped mainly by this aerodynamic effect. Just after the ball is struck, it's traveling and spinning at its fastest. The combination of forward speed and backspin creates lift, which is almost completely counteracted by gravity trying to pull the ball down. The ball seems to carry on in a straight line until drag, the resistance of the air itself to the ball moving forward, slows the ball down to the point where the lifting effect no longer works, and the ball falls steeply. The amount of backspin left as the ball lands and its angle of descent determine in part the degree to which the ball pitches forward and how quickly it stops. Mid and short iron shots struck particularly well travel very high and drop almost vertically, still spinning enough to move backwards on landing. Even for a perfectly straight shot, the aerodynamics are complex. Lift and drag will be affected by the kind of air the ball must travel through, the design of the ball, and the direction and speed of the wind. Humidity, altitude, and temperature all affect the quality of the air. High humidity, low altitude, and low temperature all increase the aerodynamic effect. The ball flies higher and falls shorter and steeper as the aerodynamic effect increases. A dry summer's day in the Alps will produce a longer, lower flying shot with a much flatter trajectory than normal. A damp winter's day at sea level will produce a higher, shorter shot with a steeper drop. The depth, size, and pattern of dimples on the ball greatly affect its flight, and the way the ball is constructed and its temperature determine how fast it will fly off the club and how much it will spin. Deeper dimples make for more lift, a shorter carry, a steeper descent, and greater sensitivity to wind conditions. The size of the dimples can't change too much, though. Make them too deep and they cause too much drag. Too shallow and there's not enough lift. But within this range there's a choice. Low trajectory balls reduce the angle of descent to get the longest possible drive. At the other end of the scale, balls which fly very high and drop steeply, useful for maximum accuracy and favoured by the pros. The structure of the ball determines how much it compresses and how quickly it regains its shape. High compression balls, the golf ball equivalent of an overinflated football, compress less and don't stay in contact with the club as long as normal, which means they take less backspin, but they fly faster off the club and go slightly further. The temperature of the ball makes a big difference to the amount it compresses and the time it takes to reform. Test results from machines like Metal Max reveal that a ball at 20 degrees centigrade will travel up to 20 yards further than one at freezing point. On a cold day, a golfer will gain a small advantage by playing a ball which has spent the night on top of a radiator and been stored in an insulated bag until it's used. Wind speed and direction have a marked effect on the way the ball behaves. A shot played with the wind behind will fly lower, travel further, and fall less steeply as the effective ball-to-air speed is reduced. And a shot played into the wind will fly higher, shorter, and drop steeper as the ball-to-air speed increases. You may by now have come to the conclusion that for your longest drive you need a warm, dry day at an alpine course, a high compression, low trajectory ball, and a following wind. True up to a point, but but the shot that flies furthest in conditions like these might have to be hit with a 2 or even a 3 wood rather than a driver. The driver works right at the limits of what is possible in golf, and when the air conditions are at such extremes, the boundaries can change. Even in normal conditions, the drive needs to be struck with the club on the upsweep to help give the shot enough height for maximum distance. No one makes a super driver, a longer club with less loft than a driver, for the simple reason that it wouldn't hit the ball as far as a driver would. About 7 degrees of loft is the useful limit. Any less, and the club does not produce enough backspin for a good flight. A club which gave no backspin at all would produce a much shorter shot. As conditions move toward thinner air with the wind behind, the driver starts to suffer from the same problem, and a slightly more lofted wood becomes the club which will hit the ball furthest. The same principle applies to individual golfers. A drive must be hit with the club head travelling at great speed to get the right combination of backspin and forward speed for maximum carry. Many players may not be capable of achieving that sort of speed, so in many cases it's possible that a 2 or 3 wood will send the ball further than a driver. If your drives consistently fly less than 30 to 40 feet high, your swing may be inefficient, or maybe you're simply not strong enough to generate the club head speed necessary for the driver to work properly. Drop down a gear for better performance all round and use a 2 or 3 wood. A shot struck with the club head travelling in any direction other than along the intended line will end up with a spin which is on a tilt. Analysis of spin at an angle like this is simplified by separating the spin into 2 components, backspin and side spin, so that we can look at the effects of side spin in isolation. The idea of having a ratio between backspin and side spin also helps explain how it helps iron shots to be contacted just before the bottom of the swing. This increases the backspin without affecting any potential side spin, moving the angle of tilt nearer to the ideal case, no side spin at all. Most golfers are only too aware of the effects of side spin. Slice and hook are terms the beginner learns early on. The same aerodynamic effect which keeps the ball in the air so long is at work here too. On a slice, air flows faster around the right side of the ball and it veers in that direction. All the principles are the same as for the straight shot with backspin. Warm air, high altitude, and a following wind will make a slice curve less, as will a low trajectory ball. Good golfers often use side spin, making shots curve gently to the left, a draw, or gently to the right, a fade. This isn't difficult if you have a good basic swing. More about this later in the special shots section. Draw and fade can also be used to gain distance in a crosswind. A fade, struck into a left to right wind, will travel much further than an ordinary straight shot. Air travels faster around the front of the ball than the back, reducing the overall effect of drag. A draw, played into the same crosswind, hoping to keep the ball on line, will considerably reduce the length of the shot.